What are some of the critical things that you want to get clear on if you want to awaken properly, or know if you're awakened properly? I'm Jason for AwakenedEssence.com. Get clear on what your motivation is. How motivated am I? Therefore, what do I do about it? So, where does your resources and your attention go? Get clear on your self-honesty and how much you're prepared to look at. Are you lying to yourself, and how do you double check that? That's the tough one, as is the next one. Self-responsibility. It's up to me, nobody else. You cannot expect a guru to give it to you. They're like if awakening is about getting yourself up to 100 degrees, a spiritual teacher, a guru, is like a nice hot spa pool that you sit in. It warms you up, and so you get used to being hot. So you get used to holding the vibration. I can't give it to you. I know that some of them like to say, give me your devotion and I will help you awaken. If you're not being self-responsible, you're never going to choose to take self-responsibility and ownership, self-honesty and self-responsibility for what you're doing with your own attention. I can't tell you what to do with your attention. Nobody can, except for you. So, self-responsibility. That's a really good video to watch. Take responsibility. Do you take responsibility? How much self-responsibility do you take? Because it's your choice of your attention. Then, there's this core law of grace that I call remembrance. How often do you remember, am I present? And what do you do when you remember that? Just because you remember, I'm not present, doesn't mean you're present at all. I don't know why Eckhart Tolle ever said that, but it's nonsense. That's when you go, okay, and you go through the process of really checking that you're not lying to yourself, self-honesty, self-responsibility, application, motivation. Feel your body. Notice the space. Hearing the sounds. This is a magical time to be out in the wild. Especially when there's families of kookaburras around, because they all say hello to each other, which is what they're doing at the moment. Remembrance. This one, how often do you remember to check in, is a true measure of how well you are going on this path, because to remember to check in, because it is a doing, it's a placement of your attention into that which you are. Grows as your awakening does. So if you're not remembering to check in frequently times a minute, can you be self-honest? Do you check in that often? There's your measuring stick straight away. It's scary, isn't it? But it builds. Okay, there's processes that happen as you go through the phases of awakening. This is true. This is true, if it's real. So, if people say there is no doer, it's because they're not really awake. That's just because they're in their head, in the mental body where all this stuff's created. Because it's not in here. And the reason that it's not in here is because they're not choosing to be aware of what's in here. They're not placing their attention there. If you think there is no doer and you are there, then make contact or have a free introductory chat. And I'll be able to tell you if it's real or not. I'll be able to feel you. People that think there is no doer and that you can't describe the stuff and you can't define the stuff, they just simply don't know their stuff well enough. When you know what it is you're doing, like if you're an apprentice, you go through your apprenticeship, you learn how to do your trade, and then 20 years later, after you've been doing it for 20 years, you know your stuff, right? You know the shortcuts, you know what works, you know the quick ways. When you're deeply abiding in stillness and you haven't lost it, for me that's 11 and a half years so far, I can be pretty precise about this. And I can tell if someone's lying to themselves and they're trying to convince me as well. Those are good videos. Those are things to look at. Then there's other factors you might want to choose to consider if you're into the spiritual stuff. You know, the healing methods. I teach Golden Ray and Reiki. It's good to have the space coming out. There are ways to do that, but it's based in presence first. Golden Ray is pretty spectacular actually. It's actually part of our energetic systems and is encoded into our DNA. I can do all that esoteric stuff. But it's presence first, spiritual stuff second. Take a look at your psychology, who you are and how you connect into all of this, and how well you can stably awaken is related to your unconscious protection mechanisms. And as they fall away, you actually become very comfortable with being nothing. The ego still exists. It's just that it gets used to, it actually quite enjoys being one with all of this instead of a defined space that it's in control of. That's actually what happens. Your psychological bits fall away. That's why I don't recommend drugs. When you practice the presence process correctly, you will awaken in a real fashion, measurably so, as I keep defining in these videos on this website. It will be real. And you will have done it because you have consciously mastered the process and your unconscious protection mechanisms have unfolded properly. So you are safe, you are stable, you are functional. Everybody just wants to pop open and be awake. Eckhart Tolle did that. He lost everything. Dysfunctional for 2 years. Sitting on the park bench watching the ducks flap their wings in the water, which is in his book. Of course, he didn't say that he was borrowing money off friends and family to eat, because he was dysfunctional. If you do this practice process as you awaken, you can hold a normal job. You can work in a bully-loaded, toxic corporate environment. That's your practice ground. You practice with them instead of your family and friends. Much better way to do it. So as you practice presence and your unconscious protection mechanisms unfold and allow you to be present, to hold the stillness throughout your day, to hold your stillness, your presence, and your true inner being, which is nothingness and isn't a person, impersonal awareness, the void. As you get used to holding that, you can function in your job. You can handle arguments and it's still there. It's measurable. You can have accidents and you stay conscious and you're still in touch with your nothingness, your presence, your stillness, while your body's broken and bleeding and all those other things. This is true. I know, because it's happened to me. Measurable. So if you've had an argument in the last month, were you present through it and after it? Was that sense of peace there at the same time as you were angry or sad or in grief? When you master this stuff, that's what happens. So these are things you look at. And when you know what's real, then you can focus on that, and then all the spiritual myths and stuff. Kundalini, oh my God, what a myth. Doesn't help. I've had it. I know lots of people that have had it and they've been quite damaged by it. If it's real, it's damaging, painful. Get clear on what it is, stay focused on it, and you will deepen fast. Check out what's in the rest of this website. Check out whether coaching would be any good for you. So it's real and you get a taste of it, and then you know what you're doing. I'm Jason for AwakenedEssence.com. See you in the next video.